Hi, this is Dave Kelly, and this is the Man Shit Podcast, where we interview all manner of people, providing real-life tips for men to be better men. Today I'm interviewing James Swanwick. James has helped literally thousands of people get back in control of their drinking. Some have reduced their drinking, some have eliminated it completely, but all have benefited when they made this move. Enjoy the episode. Hey there, James.
David.
Funny how we both have been living in Los Angeles and we find ourselves living back in Australia while the COVID-19 is unravelling itself.
Yeah, no, I spent 20 years rejecting my native country of Australia only to come back, be forced to stay here and realise that I actually love it.
That's great. Well, we're in winter here. We're entering winter, and where you are up in Brisbane is a magnificent. I lived up that way on the Gold Coast for 25 years, and it's just a magnificent. It's hard to describe how beautiful the winters are.
Oh, the sunsets are amazing. The sunrises are incredible. It's not so cold that it's uncomfortable cold, but it's just cool enough where it's just crisp and beautiful.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I've described a little bit about the Man Shit project. And really what we're trying to do there is to reach out to men and encourage them in areas where maybe they think their life's not going as well as they had hoped it would go, and give them a chance to get back on track. So the whole thing is community. So guys can come into a forum, a format where they don't feel alone. Because, you and I are both blokes, and we've talked about this before in our groups. Men tend to isolate themselves when things aren't going right, don't they?
Yeah, especially in the Australian culture and many cultures around the world. But, it was just the way it was through the early 1900s and the mid 1900s and even up to 70s and 80s and even 90s. In Australia, at least, the culture is that if you're a man and you got a problem, you just stiff upper lip, just get on with it and deal with it. And that stereotype has been perpetuated over many decades. Mm-hmm. And then thankfully, that stereotype has started to be disintegrated somewhat, I think, in recent years, where men are now feeling more comfortable that they can open up and express. Doesn't mean that we have to think of ourselves as pussies or soft or crybabies or whatever, but just the fact that we can actually even be part of a conversation about our mental health or whatever's going on is huge progress compared to, say, our parents or our grandparents or their parents' time.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I found that when I moved to Los Angeles that there's like lots of things in LA, it's all out there for show. America's more like that than Australia is, where it seemed to be a lot more conservative. But you go to America, they're bigger and louder and everything's bigger. And then you meet people in Los Angeles and think, whoa, it's blown my categories. I'm seeing all this stuff. So you see the very fringes of openness. And then I guess at the other end, you see just people just as tight as anywhere else you might find in the world. But
yeah, one of the things I realized, I moved to the US in 2002. And I was shocked, and I joined the Los Angeles Rugby Club, and I'd played rugby all throughout, my earlier years in Brisbane and played in London as well. And when I played rugby in those clubs, when we would greet other teammates at a training or after a game, we would shake hands, just shake hands. Yeah. Certainly my father and I would always shake hands after the age of 8 or 9, hugs. I stopped getting hugs from him around 8 or 9. And then when I moved to Los Angeles and I joined the Los Angeles Rugby Club, all of a sudden blokes were hugging me, going, "Hey, Swano, what's up?" And they'd give me a little hug. I'd be like, "Oh, this is kind of weird." And, I realized that was kind of like a thing in California or in the US, more so than it had been a thing in Australia and the UK. And, years later, I even had to request of my father, after 30 something years of not having a hug, I had to say, "Oh, do you think we could experiment with just having a little hug?" And even that was super awkward. So, and then even just recently, a few months ago, I caught up with a schoolmate of mine I hadn't seen in 25 years, I think. And when I saw him, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to go for the hug or go for the handshake. And in the end, we were kind of stuck in between, and we ended up doing the handshake. And I was like, oh, it's this kind of awkward thing. Is a hug appropriate or is a handshake appropriate? So, it's just so many stereotypes and so many kind of traditions or cultures and built up over many years that keep us either very rigid or ultimately, opening, I guess is a way to put it.
It's going to be interesting now after this COVID stuff, how we're going to greet people at all.
Oh yeah. I mean, I see people now and I can't, like I say, nice to meet you. And ordinarily I'd stick my hand out to shake their shake their hand. And now I can't do that and I almost feel rude, like I'm being rude. Like I'm like, oh, hi, nice to meet you, without extending my hand. I feel like I'm being abrasive or pompous or arrogant or something.
Yeah. Interesting, new, always changes happening, and plenty of changes ahead, that's for sure. So the background for people listening, I met James in March of last year. So it's now May, so what's that, 14 months ago. And I met James, we were both at the Tony Robbins UPW event in Los Angeles. And I met this cool looking guy, and then I heard an Australian accent. I thought, oh, beauty. So we caught up, and then I think on about Monday, I said, hey, listen, I'm thinking of moving up to where you're living, up near Venice. Could I catch up with you on Saturday and have a coffee? And he said, no, I'm too busy. Come to my event. I said, who's this bloke who's got an event? What's all this about? And he sends me a link, and this is my true response. This link comes in, I clicked on it, and it said, alcohol-free living. And I looked at it, and I thought, this is 14 months ago, and I thought, I've never even thought of that before, as to it applying to me, because I was a social drinker who, if I went out and had a big night, sure, that was great, it'd be fun and all the rest of it, and I'd have friends knocking on the door the next day, Dave, come on, we're going for the Sunday session. No way. I was not the guy I don't think I've ever done a Sunday session because I just could never back up. So alcohol for me was something I would use, and I would abuse it. But then it was like, whoa, give me space before next time, because I just needed to get that out of my system. And so when I thought alcohol-free living, it was just the concept that I thought, that just doesn't apply to me ever. And I'd never stopped not drinking for a month. People overdo it at Christmas, and they think, right, dry January. I never did that because I never overdid it to that degree. But there were specific instances where I would definitely overdo it. So the idea of not drinking at all was just like the weirdest concept ever. So I went along to the weekend, and and I met a whole bunch of cool people, and I started to think, hey, they've actually looked normal. In fact, they look pretty cool, and they're not drinking, some of those people, or a lot of those people. And at the end of the weekend, James said, he sort of challenged everyone and said, why don't you try to stop drinking for 1 month, 30 days, and just see how it goes? And I thought at that point in my life, I thought, yeah, I'll give that a shot. Because I wanted to see in my case whether I knew I was using alcohol for specific reasons. And often it was just to avoid feelings. And I hadn't really been prepared to admit that to myself. I'd use, if things got a bit tight, drink alcohol, have a big night or whatever, and kind of forget about it. Didn't really deal with it, but just forget it. It just disappears in the background. So I thought, instead of being a chicken and being gutless and avoiding these feelings which are coming up, I'm going to actually do this and face up to them. So that started the journey for me, and I haven't had a drink since, which is now 14 months. So I really got to thank you for that, because James, I mean, seriously, I would say this to any person I meet. Not drinking for me has just opened up a whole new world and of training and education, but also just transformation in my life. Being open to things and learning to really get down to it. Why did I feel nervous and scared in that situation when I would have usually plied myself with alcohol to get through it? And now that I'm not doing that, it's really given me the opportunity to look in deep. And I've just got so much to be thankful for this path I've taken on. And you were the instigator. So genuinely, I know you've helped lots of people through the programs you run. So give us an idea of what the program typically is that and how many people you've helped along the way, James.
Yeah, thank you, and good on you for being alcohol-free all this time, David. I acknowledge you for your commitment to your health and to the transformation. Great job. Yeah, I was a societally acceptable drinker in Australia right up until my mid-30s, and I'd drink a couple drinks during the week or a bit more on weekends. On occasion, I'd get drunk and have a good time, but I wasn't what society would deem an alcoholic by any stretch of the imagination. And I woke up one day in my mid-30s and I was like, oh, man, I'm a bit overweight. I'm kind of tired. I'm not sleeping too great. I think I might just take a little break here. And so I committed to taking 30 days off alcohol. And in 30 days, I lost 13 pounds, which is like, 6 kilos, 6 or 7 kilos. And I slept better. I looked better. I got all these opportunities started flowing into my life just in the space of 30 short days. And so I thought, oh, this is pretty good. I'll just keep going. And I've just kept going, and I haven't drunk now since 2010. Have not had one drop of alcohol since 2010. So for me in that time, I've created businesses, I've traveled, attracted great relationships. I've experienced a life with alcohol and a life without alcohol, and a life without it is just way better for me. 2015, so many people were asking me, is it true you don't drink? How do you have fun without drinking? And so I thought, I'll just create a program that helps people. So I created this little 30-day no alcohol challenge, which was a video a day for 30 days, and people enroll and they get delivered this video from me each day, showing them how to quit and stay quit from alcohol, and just kind of designed to rewire your brain around alcohol and stop looking at it as this beautiful, attractive thing, and start looking at it as, looking at alcohol-free living as a beautiful, attractive thing. That particular program's helped about 20,000 people now since 2015 quit drinking for at least 30 days. Many of those people have remained alcohol free. Many of them have returned to some drinking, but at a far reduced rate than before. Most importantly, almost all of them have re-explored their relationship with alcohol and have taken positive steps towards either reducing or quitting entirely, and just, experiencing more calm and peace and joy and fun in their life. Because no one really wants to quit drinking. Everyone just wants to get the benefits of quitting drinking. And what I've found to be true, and those 20,000 people, at least what they tell me, is that they feel better, they look better, they have less stress and less anxiety, they have more joy, they make better choices, they have more fun, and it's just, life is a lot better. And just to be clear, you don't need to be an alcoholic in order to take the 30-day no alcohol challenge, or even to want to reduce or quit. If alcohol is compromising your life in any way, it's okay to reduce or quit. It doesn't mean you're an alcoholic. It doesn't mean you got this big problem. Or it's okay if you are, by medical judgments, an alcoholic and you want to quit. That's okay too, right? Just as long as you identify that that alcohol is holding you back and you do something about it, that is immense progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've found it, just the phrase sobriety to me always was linked directly with being an alcoholic. And so, but now I meet people and say, I've been sober for this long. And that sometimes means they had a problem with alcohol, and sometimes means they've just chosen that sober lifestyle. And somebody sent me a post right at this, when I started this journey, because she was very excited for me. And it was sobriety delivers what alcohol promises. Because alcohol promises all these great things, but normally it just leaves you with a headache the next day, or at least not feeling good, or at least having your wallet. It can take weight off. It takes weight off your wallet, definitely, certainly in America and Australia. So I've found that it does deliver everything it promises, and it gives bunches of opportunities as well. So how would you know if you? So you've talked about the fact that you don't have to be an alcoholic, which I found a surprise as well, James, because I would go the first couple of times I went out on a date, and I thought, I wonder how this woman's going to perceive me. Anyway, she perceived me as this rotten drunk, like an alcoholic that's just reformed. She said, why don't you drink? It was just such a strange concept. And I'm finding now, though, that this whole non-drinking movement is growing. You're hearing about it more. You're seeing sort of, and I've been to a couple of venues and events where non-alcoholic drinks and mixes were being used, etc., cocktails. And that was, I think it's really catching on, isn't it? This whole alternative to what we've grown up with in our heritage.
Yeah, there's a seismic shift going on, and there's still a seismic shift to go on as well. And the shift is really a way of the way that we look at alcohol. For many years, it's fun. It creates bonding between people. It's a form of connection. It's a way to create romance. And now what people are waking up to is you can actually create a bond, and you can create connection, and you can create romance without the alcohol. And what is alcohol anyway? Well, alcohol, in my view, is really just attractively packaged poison. That's all it is, because when you break alcohol down, it's a toxin. It's a poison. In fact, back in the day, if you trace the origins of alcohol, witches used to use it in their witchcraft to numb the pain and numb the senses of their victims, to lead them into a false sense of security. And there's a Arabic term for alcohol. Actually, the word alcohol actually comes from an Arabic term, which is al-kuhul. And alcohol actually means body-eating spirit. And yet very clever marketers throughout history have convinced us that this poison is something to celebrate. And you think about it, like when people say, oh, we'll catch up for a few drinks, they don't just say, oh, we'll catch up for a few drinks. They say, oh, we'll catch up for a few drinks, with a big smile on their face, right? It's like, or when they talk about how they had a big night last night on the booze, like, oh, had a big night on the booze last night, kind of saying it with a smile and a grin, right? So we associate alcohol with fun and pleasure and joy because we've been brainwashed into believing that this is the case. And so everyone just goes along with it. If you've grown up in your entire life, you have a waiter or a waitress at a bar or a restaurant coming up to you and with a very pleasant smile on their face saying, may I get you started with some drinks? Then you must, like unconsciously, that's telling you, oh, drinks are pleasurable and fun and joyous and a good time. If you've grown up your entire life with your parents saying, oh, no, you can't drink until you're 16, as if like when you're 16 or 17 or 8 or whatever age it is, then you'll be able to like celebrate being an adult. That's the rite of passage. Then you're going to believe that alcohol is something to be savored and to be glorified, right? And that is a rite of passage. But let me ask you this: the first time you drank, what did you do? What was the taste? I remember the first time I had a drink. I was probably 12. My father let me have a sip of brandy, and I went like, oh, that's disgusting, because it's poison. It's a toxin. I remember the first time I smoked a cigar. My dad was smoking a cigar, and he said, "All right, have a puff." And I was probably similar age, 12 or 13, and I puffed it in, and I went green as right, because it's nasty. But yet we have this society convince us that it's something that we should get used to and come to appreciate because everyone does it, and it's like a form of bonding, and it's ridiculous in my view. So, what is alcohol? Attractively packaged poison. And we're living in a matrix where all of society and all of our friends and colleagues and society keep having us believe that it's something to be celebrated. It's just a toxin. It's a poison.
And it's fascinating. When I was in New York last year, and you were there at the same time, and somehow I found out about a alcohol-free cocktail night, and I went along to that, and it was quite amazing that it was popular. And I guess like anything in New York, you're going to find a sector of interest in whatever's being promoted. But I went along there, and it was fascinating the drinks that were being made, because for all intents and purposes, apart from the cost, which was about half the cost, there's wildly creative things that can happen, and still gives you that sense of doing something a bit different and special, and you can do it with someone else. And I'm pretty excited about that as being offered up in a greater way. And you see these things popping up, and more talk all the time about alcohol free. I found that I came back to Australia last year in November, and I had organised a school reunion of about a dozen mates of mine, and we hadn't seen these guys for 20 years. And one of the friends now owns a pub. So we all turned up at his pub. It was a bit of a drive for some, but we all got there, and it was just such a great afternoon. And I was there not drinking, and the guys initially thought, what's going on? like it was almost too much to bear that, you know, we'd all thought, and we'd had a WhatsApp group going. So there was all this expectation and stirring each other and having fun before we got there. And clearly in everyone's mind was, hey, we're going to have drinks and it'll be great. And I just wasn't drinking, but I just participated. I think at the end of that, those guys thought, he must be doing something else. He's having such a good time that, and hasn't drank a beer with us, but he's having a great time right into it, and probably been the silliest one there. And I've found for me that shattering those, for me, I suspect that to a degree, not a large degree in my case, but to a degree, when I go into those social settings, I needed alcohol just to relax and then for the real Dave to evolve. You know, when I get past my stories and stuff about why I couldn't evolve. And maybe that was in the presence of certain people you feel particularly anxious about or whatever. But have you found that, I'd love to understand, you know, you've dealt with a lot of people now, you've helped a lot of people. Can you give me some of the sensational success stories that people tell you about of how this has transformed their life? And that might be in ways like, for example, it might, and you talk about, I'd love you to share more what you mean by people getting better looking, because, you know, we're all wanting to get better looking, I guess, or some of it. And so, that's an attraction. There's a good bit of marketing that you can hang your hat on there. But there's probably plenty of other ways, financially, relationships, all these other benefits that come from not having to have that crutch as you enter into the engagement of those different relationships. Just tell us some of because I'm sure there's some life-changing stuff. I know my life's changed. I'm not trying to convince anyone, but I'm sure you've got so many stories, James.
I was at a conference in Austin, Texas in 2018. I was walking through, it was the Paleo FX conference, and this woman walked up to me. She said, are you James Swanwick? And I said, yes. She said, I want to thank you because you helped save my marriage. And I was like, what? What do you mean? She goes, my husband and I did your 30-day no alcohol challenge. And before we started, we were heading for divorce. And by the time we were halfway through it and towards the end of it, we'd reconciled and everything's been great subsequently. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm like, oh, it's amazing. Thank you so much. And when I pressed her a little bit more, just to go into specifics, she told me that it wasn't like they were their relationship felt like it was rock bottom, but it wasn't like, you know, their entire life was rock bottom. What it was is that their drinking was leaving them irritable. So they were more prone to having little fights here and there, not big, massive fights, but like little fights. They weren't communicating. They didn't open up as much. They were kind of retreating into having like a couple of drinks a night, watching TV, but not really communicating. And as a result, over time, their relationship just kind of, you know, went slowly or quickly downhill. And then when they stopped the drinking and they started communicating again with clarity and focus, and they were less irritable because they were sleeping better, which is what happens when you quit alcohol, their relationship started to flourish. So that's a pretty cool example, I think, of how, you know, getting rid of one vice can just open up communication and totally transform your life. There are other people who've done the obvious things, like they quit alcohol and they've lost 100 pounds, you know, like, I mean, all you got to do is look at my before and after photo. There's a before photo of me on 30daynoalcoholchallenge.com, and you can see when I was drinking, I was like softer in the face, had a puffier face, I had a double chin. It wasn't like I was fat, but I was like overweight, you know? And then you look at me now, and I just feel like I look the way that nature intended me to look. It's not like I'm super ripped or super strong, or like it's not like I'm working out in the gym every single day of the week and lifting weights. I mean, I go to the gym, I lift weights, but I just think I look the way that I'm supposed to look, you know? And that feels great, as opposed to the way that I'm not supposed to look, which is like, you know, like wrinkles and dry and weathered skin and kind of like a little double chin, just carrying a little bit of extra weight and just kind of like a soft look. you do get better looking when you quit alcohol, because when you're drinking alcohol, the toxins dehydrate your body's largest organ, and your body's largest organ is your skin. And so when you're feeding your largest organ toxins and you're dehydrating it, your skin looks dry and weathered, which makes you look older than you actually are. But as soon as you eliminate alcohol and you just drink water or whatever, all of a sudden your skin starts to just come to life again.
Yeah.
And you know, it has a color to it. It looks hydrated. It starts to go back to the way that nature always intended your skin to look. And so it's like, oh, you look great. So, you know, you can go and get plastic surgery and a little tuck here and a cut there and whatever. I always say to people, just stop drinking. You'll be shocked at how much better looking you get. Like, people just comment on it and say, oh, you look great. What have you been doing? Like, I just stopped feeding my body toxins that was destroying my skin. Women don't need to buy like Neutrogena and all these expensive moisturizers and oil of Olay or what, I don't know, whatever, you know, you see all those fancy marketing things. You don't need to plaster your face with moisturizer. You just got to stop drinking and you'll get 100 times better looking. So yeah, you know, there's those kind of transformations. And then, you know, there are people who literally make hundreds of thousands of dollars more because they quit drinking. I mean, I've generated millions of dollars in revenue in the decade that from when I quit drinking. I never made more than six figures right up to the point where you know, while I was drinking. But the moment I quit drinking, I started on that journey of generating, you know, seven figures and beyond from businesses that I created. It doesn't matter whether you make six figures or seven figures. For me, it was just like a very noticeable shift from like, while I was drinking, I was like stuck here. When I stopped drinking, all of a sudden, you know, my income started to increase noticeably. So yeah, there's some of the changes that can happen in people's lives just from removing alcohol.
Yeah. I've loved the fact that there's no downtime now in my life. I would always find that the night after drinking, the next day, and depends on how much I drank, my performance would drop. I'd sleep in longer. Feel bashed around, and sometimes it'd be half the day just gone and wasted. And I used to it was so normalized in my life that I never considered. That's why it was a shock when it was put to me about this idea of not drinking for life, because I never even thought of that. And I think the Australian culture here, I talk about not drinking now. People are like, they're having conniptions because they're more worried for me. I think, well, I don't know. I'm not drinking. It's really working for me. I'm not sure I need to drink in the future, but I'm not making up those big decisions. But do you find that now that you've got 10 years under your belt, it's almost like, I don't know, you've got a record there that you don't want to blemish, but do you ever get tempted to try alcohol, and what happens at that point where you think, yeah, I'm at a wedding, I'm with my partner, that could work, a nice glass of Merlot or something.
Well, funny you should ask that. Actually, last night, I for about 5 seconds, I started dreaming of an ice cold beer, but that's only happened a handful of times over 10 years. And I was driving along a street. I was having a conversation about. We were joking about, you know, bars and hotels and restaurants open, and we were kind of doing a fake conversation, like a fun conversation. It's like, yeah, let's go to the pub and get shit-faced, or yeah, let's go and get wasted, and like, yeah, let's go and get all fucked up, if I'm allowed to say that. We were kind of joking about that, and then all of a sudden I was imagining drinking a nice cold pint of beer. And then I was like, oh, actually, now I think about it, oh, a pint of beer. Oh, there's this RSL, Retired Services League club on North Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, and the sun sets over Bondi Beach in the summer. And upstairs in that RSL, they freeze all of the glasses. So they put the like the schooners or the pints, they put them in like a fridge or a freezer. so that when they go to pour you the beer from the tap, they pour it into like a frozen glass, so you can hear the crisp, and so it's really cold. And as you're looking over this beautiful setting of Bondi Beach in Australia in the heart of summer in December, and you have that beer there, it's like, oh, that's pretty tasty. That's pretty damn tasty. Like that's, so I do get that feeling on occasion. On occasion. I could probably count on my two hands how many times I've had that feeling over a decade. So let's say once a year for like 10 years, right? But the feeling lasts for about a total of 5 seconds. And then I'm like, no. And then I just let it come through me, and then it's gone. And then I just come back to like, how awesome do I feel the other 23 hours, 23 hours and 59 minutes and 55 seconds of every single day from being alcohol free, and then it's gone, you know? So yeah, I think that's it. Once you break the back of it and you start to feel like you can feel good all the time. And like, here's the thing. Now when I go to the RSL, and I have been back to the RSL a few times there in Sydney, not in the last couple of years, but I just order out of the same pint glass, but I just say soda water, ice, and a piece of lime. And then I hear the sound of the soda water cracking on the frozen glass. And I go and sit down and I drink I squeeze the lime into the glass. And then I look at the view and drink it. And that's beautiful. Like that's just incredible.
Yeah. I found that when I would, there was a couple of instances where I went out and with the people I was with were uncomfortable about the fact that I was not drinking. But and after going through a few of those experiences, I mean, I wasn't going to save them from feeling uncomfortable because I have no judgment. It's all, your life, my life. We make our choices, and that's our life. And what I found was that it occurred to me that this process of not drinking has brought me freedom, whereas before I wasn't free, because there would have never been a social situation in my life that I was going into where I wasn't going to drink. Every situation I had to drink. It was almost like the expectation was there, the programming was there, and there would be never a reason. Like, why would you not drink when there's beers there and you're with friends, etc.? It's just like, well, that's just, why would you not do that? So there was never a choice of deciding to do it or deciding not to do it. I find now I've got that choice every time, and I'm empowered by the fact that I've got that choice. I look at a lot of my friends and and I don't think they've got the choice, because if they did, then they would have a night off when they're in a raucous, setting where they're having fun with people and the band's ripping along and whatever. They choose not to, but that doesn't, to the normal person, that doesn't happen. And I've found great freedom. It's permeated the rest of my life in so many different tangible ways. So I've got you to think. I never would have expected that was so powerful.
Yeah. One of the things I realized as well when I quit drinking is that people really don't care as much as we think they care that we're not drinking, if at all. So many people just won't even care. And then the people who do care hardly really care. And the people who really, 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 really care, I would just question why I'm even friends or friendly with them anyway. Because that's such rigid thinking, in my view. So, people go, oh, but socially, people are going to be questioning me. I think I'm an alcoholic or blah, blah, blah. Like, first of all, who cares what they think? Second of all, no one's really thinking that, right? It's just a story we create in our mind. And third, even if they are thinking that, all they got to see is you like, oh yeah, I'm alcohol free, I'm not drinking. And then it's dropped. The whole issue's dropped. Like if you go, oh yeah, I drank too much. Oh, I shouldn't drink. I can't drink. I shouldn't. Ordinarily I would drink, but I can't drink. Then of course they're going to be like, go on, just have a drink. You'll be fine. Because you're implying that you're depriving yourself of something fun, that you're depriving them of something fun. But if you come to it and go, no, I'm not drinking. I'm alcohol free. I love it. Feeling good. I'll have a water. I'll get drunk on this soda water tonight. Watch me dance. Yeah, I'm the non-drinking guy, ha ha ha, and you're just lighthearted about it, people drop it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, it ceases to be an issue.
Yeah. In those social settings, I find it interesting because I still go out to clubs and pubs and listen to bands. I love it. In Los Angeles, I was doing that all the time. And what I find is really interesting, and I think Freud or one of those guys talks about the connection between your mouth and something. Like in the case of when we're an infant, it's the mother's breast, and then we move that, you know. And so a lot of people have a problem with cigarettes, for example. I've got a friend at the moment who's giving up, and he says, I just love that connection. You know, it's really hardwired into it. And in a similar way, you see people in social settings, and it's almost like, you know, that Peanuts cartoon where Charlie Brown, he's got his little blankie, he's got his safety blanket and his pillow. Well, I look out on these, if there's a band playing, and it's like everyone's there with a glass because that's their little security. Like, it's almost like what gives you something so you're not, if you're standing just, you know, arms there, you look boring, and you are boring. So if you grab a glass, all of a sudden it's almost like it's a prerequisite to relaxing. And I've got this thing, I'm sipping on it. It's helping me relax and all that. And that dynamic I found when I first started going out, I just noticed that for the first time. I thought, it's like everyone's got their own little security blanket. And I've got my own little security blankets too in different ways. But in the social setting, I think there's a really powerful wiring that's gone on for many, many years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it takes a little while to rewire the brain. I mean, even someone listening to this right now might be like, oh man, it just seems so daunting, so overwhelming. I get it. Until you actually attempt it, and then you go, oh, actually, no one really cares as much as I thought. Yeah. And actually, this is easier than I thought it may be. There's always a lot of resistance in the beginning, but then you finally break the back of it, and everything is not everything, but often it's smooth sailing after that. And then you just go, wow, I can't believe I kind of use this analogy. It's like when you're drinking consistently, if you know that it's holding you back in areas of your life, it's kind of like walking around with two 25-pound dumbbells in a backpack, right? You got a backpack on and there's two 25-pound dumbbells. It's holding you back from your finances, your health, your relationships. And then quitting drinking, it's like you're taking the dumbbells out. Right. And and even if you want to use the analogy that you're keeping the backpack on, you're replacing the dumbbells with marbles, like little marbles. All of a sudden the weight is just gone. Mm-hmm. Or you just take the backpack off and now you finally live life, you know? Mm-hmm. So, you know, the most challenging part is getting people to the point where they're willing to take the backpack off. Because that becomes almost like a safety net. You know, it's something that they're so familiar with, that people have encouraged and supported them and for carrying all this time. And then to actually take it off kind of invites change, and change can be very, very scary. Mm-hmm. Until you realize that change is the most amazing thing that you could actually give yourself.
Mm-hmm. So when you've seen people change their lifestyle and their life by choosing not to drink, does that, because there is a thing about alcoholism, and there's an involuntary habitual nature to it where that's always going to be there. So I guess I think an extreme person who's calls himself an alcoholic, and they are, you know, they're basket case, their life is completely hopeless because they're completely linked to alcohol. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got a social drinker. They're both drinking the same stuff, just one in much greater, more damaging quantities than the other one. Is it still true that, like, can virtually anyone get off alcohol just by purely deciding to do that and then going into the practice? Or do you find that there's people who they get to a point and then the connection and the dependency on the alcohol is something where other tools need to be put in place to help break that?
So to be clear, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm just a guy who quit alcohol and then figured out how to stay quit. And what I've shared over the years is my methodology, and that seems to have worked now for lots of people. So here's what I believe without saying it as fact. Okay, what I believe is that every human being on the planet has the ability to rewire their brain to become independent of alcohol. I don't feel like people have a born with an alcohol addiction. That's my view. That's my opinion. There might be people here, doctors, people who have been termed an alcoholic that completely disagree with me. And there are probably people who are much more educated than me on this topic than I am. So like I said, I give you that disclaimer. But what I suspect, or what I believe, is that anyone who feels like they're addicted to anything really can change that addiction, or can break that addiction with the power of their mind. And it doesn't need to be brute willpower. It doesn't need to be like brain therapy and I'm going to do this and it's really like. I think it can just be some simple changes in most, if not all cases. Now, I know that saying that I'll invite much criticism or objection, but I firmly believe that there are millions and millions of people on the planet who are walking around believing that they are an alcoholic and that they're powerless to change, and that they have to surrender to a higher power, like they invite you to do in AA, for example. And that's, in my opinion, is what's keeping them stuck. Right? I don't do that in my programs. We're not surrendering to any higher power. There's no higher power. You're not broken. You're not starting from a broken point. You're starting from, you're already a powerful human being. You're already a naturally peak performer. It's just you have this thing in the way of you performing at your peak at the moment. Temporary thing. And we're going to change your habits. We're going to change your perspective. And by changing your perspective, and by changing your habits, you're able to choose to be alcohol free rather than depriving yourself of something that you feel you're addicted to.
Right. Wonderful. Back to the social setting situation, I found that when I'd be in those social settings that I'll give you an example. I went along to a conference at the end of last year for a company I was doing some speaking for. And I was so looking forward to it because it was there was actually 700 people at the conference. So each night they would have a night at the bar, and it was great to meet all the people from all over America and the world. But I found that in that situation, I got pretty bored because in the past, you would in a kind of a drunken state in that context, I would have definitely been on the drunk end of the night. You go and have these hilarious conversations about nothing with a bunch of people. And then you might stick with them for the rest of the night, or you might then go on and have pretty much the same content, which I admit, in my case, was all, you'd talk about some things of interest, but a lot of it would be padded out with just crap and shit and nothingness. And then you go to another group and do the same thing. And in that way, you kind of have this vague sense that you're networking and you're meeting these people. And I found that when I was there, because this was a unique situation where I was wanting to get to know a whole bunch of people, but I found that the conversation was pretty inane. It was often pretty limited, and there was, I think it's probably fair to say that in that setting where once people get really lubricated and you rock up, it's very much easier for them to say, "Come on, have a drink." What do you mean you're not drinking? Come on, just have a little one. Then in that case, give him lamb. Just have a little drink, and what I came out of that, and I shared that because I'm in full disclosure, I'm in a group that James leads. It's a business kind of development group of about half a dozen guys. We meet each week and chat about our life. Most of it comes back to who we are, and that determines everything else, how we think about ourselves. And I shared that story in the group, and James basically gave me a good slap across the chops. And he said, "Well, you just got to become more interesting." And I thought, how dare you say that? At the end of it, I thought, I've got to just learn to ask better questions. And I find that now, even in those settings, yeah, if I'm with a couple, for example, or with 3 people, 4 people, like my mates in our reunion last year, what a beautiful opportunity to creatively start to think about questions that I would never have asked before, really finding out about them. Because I find that if you give people the chance to talk about themselves, then that's what they want to do. Everyone wants to be able to share and know that someone's interested. So if you're asking, and I found that for me in that situation, I've become a lot more creative in that setting. But I've also found that that principle of being able to apply my brain to a situation, my thinking has improved. There's been my memory has definitely improved. I know that for sure. My ability to think through things creatively without a whole bunch of necessarily, hang-ups about various things has improved as well. But there's no suspicion, I guess, and I'd like you to comment on the cognitive benefits of things like that, memory improvement, because I think the body is just looking for an opportunity to have a rest, isn't it? Just like at the moment, we've got COVID-19, the lungs of the planet have had a rest because we haven't been pumping CFCs and CO2 into the atmosphere. Just like when someone stops smoking, within 2 weeks, a lot of that, the smoke and the effect of that is starting to leave their body, and they're starting to look and sound better. And I'm sure that's true with alcohol as well, the effect it has on your brain.
Yeah, well, alcohol creates fogginess, irritability, subpar performance. When you remove the alcohol, you generate clarity and focus and energy, and you sleep better. Your metabolism speeds up. You are able to burn fat easier, and your liver has a holiday, gets to take a break, because your liver's been working pretty hard most of its life to break down the poisons that you've been putting into it. So yeah, when you go alcohol free, it's like your whole body starts to return to the way that nature always intended your body to run. And a lot of people say in the first 7-10 days they experience actually increased irritability or increased disrupted sleep. And I say, great, that's your body changing. That's your body getting used to the new way, because you've been feeding yourself this attractively packaged poison for most of your adult life. Your body's been responding a certain way, but then when you change it, there's going to be a little period of adjustment. Like if you go into the gym not having lifted weights all your life and you start lifting weights, your muscles are going to be sore, right? They're going to be sore in a couple of days. Likewise, you stop feeding your body the very thing that you've been feeding it for most of your adult life, your body's going to change. But then when you get through that point, man, it's beautiful on the other side. I use the analogy, it's like in the beginning, it feels like you're running through rose bushes and you're getting cut up and you're like, but then you get out the other side and it's like, oh, look at this beautiful sunlight. And, yeah.
That's a good analogy, that one. So, I mean, alcohol, do you deal with other drug problems? Alcohol's a drug for sure. And it's a socially acceptable one. That's what, is the stealth nature of it, because, we kind of grow up with it, just complete acceptability. Whereas when we grew up, probably here in Australia, marijuana was like, whoa, man, that's really bad. Or you knew there was a clear line. That was illegal. Alcohol is legal, up once you're 18 in our country. In America now, so in Australia still, marijuana is more acceptable, I guess, but it's still illegal. Whereas you go to California, you're smelling it everywhere. So do you think the principles you use to help people get off alcohol are applicable for other drugs? And have you ever worked with people with other drug dependencies?
Same concept, same process works. My experience has been alcohol, and so that's what I speak mostly to. But the same principles can work for getting off marijuana or porn or shopping addiction or love addiction or whatever addictions people have. So yeah, the same system, same methodology can work. It's just my work has been in specifically helping people with alcohol.
Yeah. And do you think same for overeating? Same principles apply?
Same.
Yeah.
Same principles. Yeah. Same principles. I mean, look, a lot of the reason why we're eating or watching porn or shopping or addicted to love or drinking or smoking or whatever it is, the issue is not the alcohol or the drugs or the porn or the whatever. That's not the issue. That's just something that we use to cover up, to numb the pain of whatever the real issue is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and a lot of times that can be my mummy didn't love me enough, or she loved me too much, or it could be my dad said this to me when I was 7 and I made it mean this, or it could be someone bullied you at school, pushed you over in the playground, or it could mean a teacher said something to you. Like there's so many things that we could have been subjected to between birth and like the age of 7 or 8 that really dictates how we see the world, because all of the neuroscience now is demonstrating that our personality and how we see the world is pretty much shaped right up until age 7 or 8, right? And so a lot of the reason why you might be drinking too much that you like in your 30s or 40s, for example, is because of something that happened in your life before the age of 7 or 8. Right? And you're dealing with some kind of childhood trauma. And when I say trauma, I don't mean trauma like something really, really, really bad. It could have just been like an innocuous comment that someone said and you made it mean something. Your school teacher said, "Oh, you're not very good at maths, are you?" And you made that to believe that you're dumb. And so the rest of your life, you've acted in a way where they're like, "Oh, I'm not smart. I'm not the smartest person." Right?
Yeah.
So when you give up alcohol, you make massive changes. It's great. But also in many sense, that's when the real work begins, because now you actually got to face yourself. For years, you've been numbing yourself and suppressing, all these issues. A lot of these deep-rooted issues start to come to the surface, and that's when the work begins.
Yeah.
In many cases.
I think alcohol can be used, I think, across a broad spectrum to deal with a whole broad spectrum of problems. As you say, whether it's, shopping, overeating, self-love, not accepting porn, whatever it is. I think alcohol can it's like a blanket that you can throw over and mask what's behind each one of those things, and they can be different in themselves. I've got I would like to just say as well, James, that in meeting you, and I met Guy Morello, and a few other guys in our group, and the topic came up of all these transformational trainings you've just been talking about, and I ended up going. At that point, I trusted you. And although I'm an engineer and I like to work it all out myself and do it, have a nice spreadsheet to pros and cons and cost-benefit analysis and whatever. Not that extreme, but I'm hamming it up a bit. But when you and Guy both said to me, "Hey, listen, Landmark Forum and ELC, Elevate Leadership Community, just go and do them. They're great transformational experiences." And I did both of those just on both your say-sos. Because I trusted you guys, and there was nothing in it for you. And that's really led to a lot of me understanding myself as well, particularly with regard to 0 to 8. What went on there? What was how am I living my life that's dependent on the things I learned, the self-image I came out of in those 0 to 8 years. And my parents, I'm with my dad here, did a great job, as best they possibly could, no question at all about that. But none of our upbringings are perfect, and some of those things can hang around. And it's weird to think that one innocuous comment that might be directed at someone's self-image, say it was, you're a bit fat, or carrying a bit of weight there as a kid. That could, and that I've heard these stories. 50 years later, that same person is using alcohol to cope with the fact that they don't feel good about themselves. Now I found that once I took alcohol away, it was like I took. The old cartoon, exit stage left, whatever that was, when whatever's going on the stage and you're there in life and you've got an exit door over there, and if things are getting a bit tight, you can make your escape. Well, alcohol for me was, I'm not going out the exit doors. I'm just going to deal with what's up. And that, for me, then, when I started these transformational stuff, all these things started popping up, and I didn't have my beer. I could go home and have a drink and sort of soften the blow. And I was saying, I'm up for it all. I'm up to really go through and deal with my shit. Hence the name Man Shit. Man Shit came out of the idea of men dealing with their shit, so that we can deal with that and then move on to have a joyful, prosperous, bountiful, full life in every respect. And for me, getting off alcohol is a great step forward. The transformational stuff I've referred to, really fundamental to building a better Dave Kelly is what it's been about. And in doing so, I'd love to hear your comment on, because I know you've done some of these transformational work as well. I find that for me, my purpose of my life is to live the fully expressed, joyful experience of being a human. And by consequence, once I'm doing that, it's going to immediately, it has to flow to those around me. If I come in and my energy into a room is like sensational, fantastic, everyone starts to get affected immediately. And I just see that as a micro example in life, that if I can be that way and fully live my life in every respect, not have any hang-ups, not have any exit doors, not have any little secrets, then immediately those around me are going to be lifted as well. That's my thesis on life at the moment. What's the transformational work you've done? How integral I guess we all see, have you seen any amazing examples of where hang-ups, that hurts that happen in 0 to 8 affect people and it manifests as other things, whether it be drinking alcohol or drugs or?
So my life has always been pretty good by Western standards of how you compare it to anyone. But there was always something, or sort of in my late 30s, I started to feel like something wasn't quite the way that it could be. I had this little nagging thing, like I was achieving some pretty cool goals, but I wasn't feeling satisfied. I wasn't feeling as happy as I could feel, even though I lived in California and was traveling the world and doing cool things, and there was still something, an unease about me. So finally, I committed to doing some transformation programs, much like you described. And I remember I really leaned into it, like in the space of, it started in October of this particular year. I went and did Landmark Forum, and then I waited 2 months, and then in January, I did another Landmark Forum, ELC, Elevate Leadership Community, and did the Advanced of Landmark Forum, and then I did the Advanced of Elevate Leadership Community, and then I did like the 3 month of Elevate Leadership Community. So in the space of, let's just say I did like the Landmark in the October, took a little break, and then from January until like March or April, I just went right in. I just like, whoosh, I'm going in. And I knew I wasn't going to make as much money. I knew I was going to be distracted from work. I knew that like it wasn't going to be great. And I just went for it. And I did like self-development overload compared to what you could do, right? And I just got dirty, got in there and ran through the road. And I ended a romantic relationship. And one stage I was on the 6th floor of the Marriott Hotel in Santa Monica, lying in the fetal position, crying like a little baby, completely lost, not knowing where to go. Like, it was messy.
Wow.
And then I came out on the other side of that feeling so much better, light and just like free. And for the most part, since then, life has just been so much better. Like, I just see life through a different lens. Doesn't mean I don't have days where I say fuck and shit a lot and get irritated, but now I have tools on how to deal with those days, And so I'm an infinitely stronger, better person mentally and emotionally than what I was pre doing those trainings. So it's a process, and I haven't arrived either. There's no like arrival. I was like, oh, now I'm like Zen-like for the rest of my life. It's like it's ongoing work.
Yeah.
But I can safely say that compared to the first 40 years of my life, the second part of it, like post 40, is infinitely better.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. Man shit, what the three thesis there is that community, we're trying to build a community of men so they don't feel like if they're struggling in an area, men tend to isolate themselves. We're all isolating ourselves at the moment, but men go into voluntary isolation when we're trying to work stuff out, or if things aren't going right, whether that be love or money or alcohol, for example, or your body starts to pack up as you get a bit older. number one, community. Next thing is inspiration. And James, the purpose of our podcast is to inspire guys. They can be looking at this. And so I would say, hopefully, the purpose of this is for this to go right out there and guys to look at this and say, okay, I'm going to be honest. I have got a problem with the way I use alcohol. And that's it. And this interview and you being so open about your, the way that has benefited other people by also being honest and dealing with the effect of alcohol and the way they use it is inspirational. So I thank you for being an inspiration here. But the third part of the Manship protocol is community, build a community, inspire people, but then take action. Because if we notice something's not right and we can and take action to address it, then we're feeling more empowered and actually feel hopeful. So in the case here, inspiration's coming. And in terms of taking action, how could people take action? How could you help people take action with regard to alcohol if they're looking and saying, hey, let's be honest, it's a bit of a problem, or I think I want to address that. How can you help in your programs and things you do?
So the easiest thing to do is just go to 30daynoalcoholchallenge.com. And I feel like that's a good first step, because it's not like you got to quit forever, but it'll give you a glimpse of what it feels like to live alcohol free. So if you go to 30daynoalcoholchallenge.com, that's a good start. If that seems like even like too much of a hurdle for you, maybe you might want to try a little 3-day challenge, in which case you can go to jamesswanwick.com/3-day challenge. My advice is try something, like begin something. Even if quitting forever seems so overwhelming and daunting to you at the moment, just take a little baby step. I think the most effective baby step is to do the 30-day challenge. But if you really want like a, I don't know, let's say a first day of life challenge, first day of life step, jamesswanwick.com/3-day challenge. Because you want to just start the ball rolling, and you want to get a glimpse of what it feels like. 3-day challenge is okay because it gives you somewhat of a feel for what it's like, but really a 30 days is going to give you a real glimpse. That gives you time to like sleep better, have more energy, more clarity and focus. And then from there you can reassess. I have a much more detailed in-depth 90-day and beyond coaching program, but that, with that you'll have a dedicated coach, and there's a big community, and there's, we kind of dig into some of those underlying issues. You can jump right into that. That's called Project 90. But if you're just dipping your toes in the water, I would suggest try a 30-day no alcohol challenge first.
Awesome.
And what I would encourage you not to do is to try to do it by yourself.
Right.
Use willpower, because it has less than a 5% success rate, and that is a failing methodology. Like if you were going to horse races on a Saturday afternoon and a horse had a 5% success rate, would you really put $100 on it? No, you wouldn't, right? So why are you going to go and try and do the same thing that you've been trying to do for years unsuccessfully, which is like, oh, this time I'm going to do it. I'm going to be motivated. I'm going to use willpower.
Yes.
No, doesn't work. So,
and taking action, action is so important. Someone might be looking at this thinking, I'll come back to it in a week. Well, you probably lost the chance. There's going to be 10,000 pieces of information come at you for the rest of the day. Take action now. I would suggest jump on James' site, get the ball rolling, and take an action, because you won't regret this, and you can get out at any stage along the process if it's bringing up stuff that's a little bit too much to deal with at the time. But it will bring up stuff, and it's all good stuff to get beyond and get past you. So James, just final question would be, what's your mission, and what's your, in terms of continuing to help people, can you, what's the next 5 years look like in terms of what you're doing to build greater awareness and also to help more people? Is there anything new coming up? You mentioned.
So the mission is to help 1 million people re-explore their relationship with alcohol. So I'm going to keep, peddling that message and helping more people explore their relationship with alcohol. And then, health and wellness in general. I want to get into like healthy supplements, healthy, you know, drinks, not non-alcoholic drinks. I'm thinking more like protein powders and green juices and things like that. Something to supplement, you know, helping people reduce or quit alcohol. But look, I'm even talking myself out of future sales here. You don't need to buy supplements in order to be healthy. You just need to like quit and stay quit from alcohol, right? That'll have a huge transformative effect on your life. You don't need to buy the latest pills and vitamin D and magnesiums and super shakes and green juices and all that stuff helps, which is why they're called supplements. It supplements health in general, right? Just quit drinking, figure out the methodology, get help to do that, and your whole health will change. Having said that, I will be producing supplemental products over the coming years to help people along their journey.
Right, wonderful. Well, you're doing a great thing. I personally can say that because it was the first step I took to bring about some other wonderful decisions in my life in the last 14 months. So it's been great to start that journey with you, and thanks for your continuing support and friendship.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on the path that you're walking down now as well. It's great to see the shift in you as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, virtual high five.
There you go.
Cheers, mate. All right. Thanks a lot, James.
You're welcome.
Ciao.